keep calling yourself low maintenance. But what you are really doing is teaching people the exact price they have to pay to keep you in their life. And the part that hurts is that you usually set that price too low to even cover your own operating costs. Quick thing before we go deeper, we are building toward our first 1,000 subscribers, and your subscription genuinely helps this channel reach people who actually use psychology instead of just quoting it. If this hits a nerve, tap like too, because that tiny signal tells the algorithm this is worth distributing. Okay, back to the uncomfortable part. If you are low maintenance, you probably pride yourself on being easy to be with. You do not ask for much. You do not complain. You adapt. You are the person who can eat anywhere, sleep anywhere, tolerate almost anything. And you do not need constant reassurance. And yes, that can be a real strength. But this is not just a personality style. It is a social strategy with a hidden metabolic cost. And once you see the mechanism, you stop romanticizing it. Because a lot of what people call low maintenance is actually a very sophisticated form of self-silencing that the nervous system learns when it decides that needs are unsafe. Here is what is actually happening. In any relationship, people do not respond to your internal experience. They respond to your signals. If you rarely signal discomfort, the other person does not experience relief. They experience a new baseline. Your absence of requests does not create gratitude. It creates a norm. Think about this for a second. When a phone battery lasts longer than expected, you do not feel thankful toward the battery. You start running heavier apps. You open more tabs. You push it harder. The battery becomes infrastructure, not a miracle. Human beings do the same thing with low-maintenance people, not because they are evil, because the brain is a prediction machine. It builds expectations out of repeated data. So the first hidden cost is this. Low maintenance converts your boundaries into invisible information. If you do not show friction, other people cannot map where your edges are. And when your edges are not mapped, you get treated like you have none. Now here is where it gets interesting. Many people think the main problem is that others take advantage. Sometimes, yes. But the deeper problem is that you start losing the ability to even feel your own no in real time. Because you trained yourself to skip the signal before it reaches your mouth. There is research on this general process under different names: emotional suppression, self-silencing, alexithymia, even interoceptive dampening. The details vary, but the core is consistent. When you repeatedly override your internal cues to preserve social harmony, your brain reduces how loudly it reports those cues to you. Not forever, but enough that you become less precise at detecting your own needs early. You only notice when the cost becomes impossible to ignore. That is why low-maintenance people often do not say, "I am hurt." They say, "I am fine," and then they disappear for 3 days, or they get sick, or they suddenly explode over something that looks small. The explosion is not about the small thing. It is the first moment your system had enough signal strength to break through the suppression pipeline. Let me show you what I mean with a pattern you have probably lived. Someone asks where you want to eat. You say, "Anywhere is fine." They pick a place you do not like. You eat anyway. You tell yourself it does not matter. But your body records the moment. Not as a conscious grudge, more like a tiny update. My preferences do not change outcomes. Do that 50 times, and you have learned a kind of helplessness around desire itself. And that is the second hidden cost. Low maintenance quietly trains your brain that wanting is ineffective. You are not just easygoing. You are practicing non-impact. And non-impact is corrosive to identity, because identity is partly built by evidence. Evidence that your inner world moves reality. When it does not, consistently, your mind starts treating your own wants as noise. You become good at accommodating, but worse at choosing. You become calm, but not clear. You become agreeable, but not anchored. Stay with me, because the next layer is the one most people miss entirely. The social world does not reward low maintenance the way you think it does. It rewards it with a specific kind of role assignment. In groups, every person occupies a niche. Some people are high feedback people. They give constant data: what they like, what they hate, what they will tolerate. They are expensive, but they are legible. Other people are low feedback people. They are cheap, but they are hard to read. In theory, hard to read should make people careful. In reality, it makes people default to convenience. Game theory explains why. Or if you are interacting repeatedly with someone and you get no negative feedback from a behavior, the rational strategy is to keep doing it. Your silence is interpreted as consent because it is the only available data. And over time, the other person updates their strategy. They invest less attention in monitoring your state because there is no penalty for not monitoring it. That means low maintenance does not just reduce your demands. It reduces the amount of attention allocated to you. And attention is not romance. Attention is not even kindness. Attention is the currency of accurate care. If someone does not track you, they cannot care for you precisely. They can only care for a generic idea of you. This is how you end up with people who say they love you, and they mean it, but they do not actually know you. They know the version of you that never interrupts them. Notice the pattern here. The more you minimize your needs, the more you get treated like a background feature instead of a living system. Like furniture. Very appreciated furniture, sure. Reliable, comfortable, but still furniture. Now here is the paradox. A lot of low-maintenance behavior is driven by empathy. You do not want to burden people. You notice their stress. You adjust. But what you call empathy can become a form of control. That sounds harsh, so let me be precise. When you anticipate other people's discomfort and preemptively remove your needs, you are deciding what they can handle without ever giving them the chance to choose. You are managing their emotional experience. And that is a quiet form of dominance, even if it looks like self-sacrifice. The mechanism behind this is often anxiety, not generosity. Specifically, attachment-related anxiety that says, if I take up space, I will be abandoned, or if I make needs visible, I will be punished, or the subtler version, if I am not easy, I will not be preferred. So you become low maintenance to become unleavable. But the cruel twist is that being unleavable is not the same as being cherished. It is just being convenient, and convenience is not stable. Convenience is replaceable. Here is a microhook that matters. If you have ever wondered why people seem to miss you only after you pull away, I think I can explain it in one sentence. Your absence becomes the first boundary they can finally perceive. When you are present and easy, your contribution blends into the environment. When you leave, the system suddenly detects the missing load-bearing beam. That is why people panic when the low-maintenance person finally stops showing up. Not because they suddenly understand your inner world, but because the infrastructure broke. Now flip everything I just said, because there is a deeper layer beneath all of this. The psychological cost is not only what other people do to you, it is what low maintenance does to your own reward circuitry. Every time you have a need and you express it, and it is met, your brain gets a clean association. I can signal. The world responds. Connection is safe. That is a loop. It stabilizes attachment and self-trust. But when you have a need and you swallow it, you get a different association. I can feel something and I can make it disappear. That feels like strength in the short term. You get a hit of control. You get to avoid conflict. You get to keep the relationship smooth. And that is exactly why it becomes addictive. Your brain starts rewarding the suppression itself, not because it is healthy, but because it reduces immediate threat. In behavioral terms, that is negative reinforcement. You remove anxiety by removing the expression of need. The relief becomes the reward, so you do it again. This is why some low-maintenance people feel vaguely irritated when someone invites them to be honest. They will say they want emotional intimacy, but when it is available, their system tightens up. Because the habit is not be authentic. The habit is stay safe by staying small. And if you want a truly unsettling insight, here it is. Over time, being low maintenance can make you suspicious of people who are willing to meet needs. Because part of you believes needs are inherently illegitimate. So when someone treats your needs as normal, it creates cognitive dissonance. You might interpret their care as pity, or you might test it, or you might reject it to restore your familiar emotional economy. So the cost is not just external neglect. It can become internal contempt for your own dependence. And humans are not designed to be non-dependent. We are designed for selective dependence, healthy dependence, chosen dependence. The fantasy of being self-contained is a trauma response dressed up as maturity. Now I want to give you a lens that ties all of this together because otherwise it is just depressing. Think of maintenance like calibration. In any system, the amount of feedback you provide determines how accurately the system can regulate around you. Thermostats need temperature readings, planes need instrument data, relationships need feedback. Being low maintenance is often just being low feedback. You are not making life easier. You are removing the data that would allow accurate intimacy. And when intimacy cannot be accurate, it becomes performative. People do broad gestures instead of precise care. They buy the gift, but miss the moment. They say the right words, but do not touch the real issue. You end up feeling unseen, and you cannot even argue about it because you did not supply the data. So here is the framework I want you to walk away with. I call it the signal budget. Every relationship has a signal budget. How much truth can move from your nervous system into the shared space without punishment? Low-maintenance people survive by keeping their signal budget artificially low. They spend almost nothing. It feels efficient, but the relationship never learns how to handle real bandwidth. Your job is not to become high maintenance. Your job is to increase signal quality. Signal quality means you communicate needs early, specifically, and with proportional intensity. Not dramatic, not apologetic, accurate. You say, I do not like when plans change last minute. I can adapt sometimes, but I need a heads up when possible. That is high-quality signal. It teaches people how to succeed with you. And here is the part that changes everything. When you raise your signal quality, you force a sorting effect. The right people feel relief because they finally have the map. The wrong people feel annoyed because the cheap version of the relationship is no longer available. That sorting is not a side effect. It is the point. Because low maintenance often keeps you in relationships that only work under conditions of your self-erasure. And if a relationship requires your self-erasure, it is not stable. It is just quiet. If you want something practical, you can do immediately. Try this experiment for 1 week. Once per day, state one preference out loud in a normal tone, without justification. Small ones count. I would rather sit outside. I want a quiet night. I do not feel like talking right now. Then watch what happens in your body. Not their reaction, your body. You will feel the withdrawal symptoms of being visible. That is the nervous system recalibrating, and watch what happens socially. Some people will meet you, some will negotiate, some will punish you with sulking or jokes or distance. That is diagnostic information you were previously paying to avoid. You were spending your own authenticity to purchase temporary smoothness. Now let me close the loop from the beginning, because I said you teach people the price to keep you. The hidden psychological cost of being low maintenance is that you eventually start believing your own discount. You start feeling guilty for normal needs. You start thinking that asking is the same as burdening. You start confusing silence with strength. But strength is not silence. Strength is tolerating the discomfort of being accurately known. So here is the question I want to leave you with. If you stopped being low maintenance tomorrow, who in your life would actually step up and who would simply shop for someone easier? Pay attention to the answer, because it tells you whether you have been loved for who you are or kept for how little you require. If this changed how you see your own easygoing nature, I would love to hear what you noticed in the comments. And remember this one line, because it is the whole video. The opposite of low maintenance is not high maintenance, it is high signal.